That 1930s guy here from Lake Ronkonkoma on a windy, slightly chilly spring day in town of Ronkonkoma, or Lake Ronkonkoma. And today I'm going to do part 2 of the Rum-Running series of videos. The other one I did from Florida, if you remember. Yeah, it's kind of windy, so forgive me. But this one's going to be about the stories of one guy who actually used to be a rum runner, or he was a delivery man for a big outfit that used to supply different places around Suffolk County. And I started the lake because that's where his story began. Now, if you watched around this lake, there used to be hotels and restaurants and dance halls, and it was a big party spot, especially during the summer months. Now, as you can see, it's mostly just houses, a few parks dotted along, but nothing significant. But in the 30s, this was big. And in the late 20s, Leo Steidel he didn't work there. He was at a dance hall, or he frequented a dance hall, and he was offered an opportunity to make some big money. We're talking $20 a day, which was a good amount of money. $500, $600 today. And he took that opportunity, and for a few years he worked delivering alcohol, which was illegal, of course, because Prohibition, to different places, speakeasies, as they called them, of course, around Long Island. And I'm going to go to some places where there were speakeasies he's delivered to and tell his story. And I'm also going to go to a location where he would have picked up the supplies to deliver. So stay tuned to this one. It's a great video, great stories, all true. He told it himself in the 1970s in an interview. And I'll tell you, it's just a great piece of history, great slice of life. Here we are now on Fire Island, right near the Fire Island Lighthouse. And this, excuse the wind, is very, very windy out today. Here, well, not exactly here, but close to here, a little bit further to the east, was the drop-off point where liquor brought in from other countries would make its way onto Long Island, destined to the bars and speakeasies throughout Suffolk County. Now, what would happen is they'd have these big boats. This is according to Leo Steidel, of course. This is just, you can see some boats out here to give you an image. Except they'd be probably a little further out in international waters. And they'd have smaller boats come and meet the large boat, bring a bunch of liquor over to the beach. And the little boats would drop the liquor onto the beach in containers to be picked up. And the containers, according to Leo, were bright yellow. The reason for that being is that the Coast Guard was always on patrol. And the big ships were clear because they were international waters, but the little ships could get intercepted. He called them, they were whale boats, is what he said they used. And if they came, they would throw the containers overboard, so that if the Coast Guard caught up with them, they couldn't get in trouble because they didn't have anything on them. The only crime was if you possessed alcohol. So, and then they'd come back later, he said, and they dive, and the yellow, bright color of the container would make it them easy to find, and they pick them up later. Now, I've also heard other stories about decoy boats, was that they would use, now Leo didn't say this, but I know it, I'm reading in newspaper stories and other sources, they would have decoy boats, like 2 decoy boats for every real boat, so that if the Coast Guard did surprise these bootleggers, they would most likely get a decoy boat with nothing on it, which was a deterrent for the Coast Guard to stop them unless they were absolutely sure that there was something on the boat. But anyway, back to Leo's great stories here. Now, once it was on the beach, he said they would put him on a flatbed truck. And a flatbed truck, of course, they could fit a lot on there, but flatbed trucks, especially in the 30s, were extremely slow. Not good getaway cars. So they would find a place to bring them, a meeting place where, now here's where Leo would come in. He said in his car, he said he didn't deal with any money. He said the money was all the big bosses dealt with the money. He had no money on him whatsoever. And they just knew who was working for who and who was getting what was already arranged. So he'd just pick it up and then they'd bring it to another place where they'd break it down further into the different specific locations, bars, speakeasies, whatnot, where they would ultimately wind up. And he said the bosses were very, as he can see from his tale, that these bosses were very organized. Everything was very well laid out, and there was a lot of money involved. And they could pay $20 a day, which was a lot of money back then, until they had this system down. And also, he said repeatedly in an interview that the big guys were not people you messed around with. He said they were real deal. They were really tough, mafia type guys. That's the word he used. And he said the higher ups had a lot of power, a lot of pull in politics, and by the time he was in the game, he entered the game in the late 20s, these systems went very smoothly, and it was a big industry. It was a completely underground transportation delivery system, and he said he very rarely had any confrontations with police, but if he did, they knew the back roads very well, and their cars were faster than the police cars, so they would always get away. He said just one time there was an incident where the police shot at him, and one of his companions got hurt, but he said besides that, there was never any confrontation with the police, never any violence whatsoever. He said it was it sounded, the way he described it was a relatively safe way to make money. And that may be different in some other areas, but in Suffolk County in New York, it seemed by the 30s was a very well laid out system. And now we're going to go to more specific locations where Leo actually went. I'm now going to approach one of the places they delivered to. A meeting place they had was this big house right here. And Leo had a great story, but one time they delivered, And he said the guy was so drunk who ran the place here that he hung out the window and he thought they were cops and he shot at them with a shotgun. And he said he was drinking that time, but in his own words, he said the guy was crazy as a bed bug. And that was one of the places where after they had the liquor, they would get their consignments about where specifically the bottles were going and how many go where and all that. It was right on Browns Road here in Lake Ronkonkoma, not too far from the lake. Continuing the story of the rum-running life of Leo Steidel, I am now in Holbrook, just south of railroad tracks, where just north of these tracks, in the early 20th century, there was a giant hotel called the Pinehurst Hotel. It wasn't giant, but it was a pretty big structure. It's no longer there. There's no evidence of it anymore. But that's not exactly where I'm talking about. Right here, perhaps in these woods, there used to be a building. See some rocks here. And there was a bar where a very interesting story happened, where Leo said he was scheduled to, he made a delivery here, not a place he usually went to, and there was a confrontation with another group of rum runners delivering who worked for another boss from Patchogue. And he said somehow, after a heated argument, they were able to get out without any violence, although it was a close call, because he said that, you know, they're very protective over territory. So the bosses had to work out a situation where they both were able to deliver to this place, but it had to be only on certain days of the week. So they each group had their own particular day that they were permitted to deliver to this place. And it just goes to show how well organized this system, this underground system of delivering liquor and beer really was back in the 30s. We are now in Smithtown, the famous Smithtown Bull statue, the junction of 25A and 25. And here, at this now abandoned property, used to be a bar that Leo delivered to. And one day he said he was here and the feds showed up because Prohibition was enforced by the Treasury Department of the federal government at this time. And he was told to go into this back room, which is right here. And while he was there, he said the agents went right to a safe that was behind the bar, purposefully left open, and in it was an envelope full of money. And that was the payoff to leave this place alone. And things like that were fairly common. But as I said before, I mean, it was Prohibition was virtually impossible to enforce. The federal government's own Wickersham Commission, in their investigation, showed that it would take a police state to enforce the amount of drinking and transportation of liquor that was going on throughout the country. So it was a a failure of a law, but it was an experiment, is what it was. I think it was Herbert Hoover who called it the noble experiment. And but having liquor underground had a lot of problems. I mean, not only crime exploding, but Leo even said that they always, the liquor was never pure liquor. It was always watered down in order for them to make more money, because without federal government looking over what was being sold, since it was all underground, they could get away with anything they wanted to. So they would water down the liquor. And he said they would often put ether pills in the beer. They would buy near beer, which was legal because it was only 1.5% alcohol, and but in order, and they would sell it. They would buy the near beer, put these ether pills in it, which would get you drunk, or make you feel drunk faster, and call it real beer. So that was just some of the tricks that they used, and it was pretty much a failure all around for everybody. And then that's why people eventually turned against it as the Long Island Railroad. This is the bridge over the Nessequag River, which is right here. And that's how I was able to find this place, because Leo described the house as being right in front of the Nessequag River, where the bridge crosses over 25A at this intersection. So anyway, it's a liquor racket, the beer racket. I can't say they didn't know right away it was destined for failure, but there was just too many ways to get around it, too difficult to enforce. And of course, as I said, on December 5th, 1933, there were enough states finally cleared the amendment to pass, the 21st Amendment, which pretty much just said that the 18th Amendment is gone, no longer valid. And then country sort of went back to normal, but I described that in another video, so I'm not going to get into detail here. But I do hope you enjoyed some of Leo's stories and some of the places I went to, and I thank you for watching. And if you enjoyed this video, please like and subscribe, and thank you for watching again.